The NBA introduced the 65 game rule to stop load management, but it seems like it's having some unintended consequences that might actually be worse than the problem it was intended to fix in the first place. Players are missing award eligibility, injuries are just being handled differently, and now the league might have to start thinking about this entirely different, probably get rid of the rule altogether. Welcome to the very first episode of Above the Noise. If you're watching right now, that means you're early, and I appreciate you so much. I'm your host, Damani Adams, and here we're going to cut through the headlines, all the noise in sports talk, and get to actually what matters. Today we're going to go above the noise on the NBA 65 game rule and why it actually might be hurting the league more than helping the league. Then we'll look at the real championship contenders in the NBA, take a deeper look at this whole expansion with Vegas and Seattle, potentially getting the team again, and close out with some quick hits, maybe talk about some March Madness, MVP race, and the NFL offseason storylines. The NBA introduced the 65 game rule, but actually I think that is the worst rule in the last couple of years. It's so counterproductive to me. You want to stop load management, I get that, I'm all for it. I think that's an issue as well. But now you got guys like Nikola Jokic, who's a few games away from missing MVP. SGA, a few games from being disqualified from MVP. Jaylen Brown and Cade Cunningham have been having an all-NBA caliber year, career years for both of them. And Cade just collapsed his lung, and now he only plays 61 games. He's out. Tyrese Maxey led the league in minutes and total points when he got hurt, and he's almost ineligible for all NBA games. It seems like the spirit of the rule is correct, but the actual logistics of it and how it actually gets applied to today's game, I think is completely off, and I think it needs to be adjusted. One unintended consequence of the 65 game rule, I personally think, is players miss awards even when they dominated the season. So Cade Cunningham, Tyrese Maxey, Nikola Jokic are just a few games away. Wemby is a couple games away. SGA is a couple games away from all being ineligible. Steph Curry, LeBron James, Giannis, these are just some of the big name stars that we know and love that are actually all NBA talent, but won't actually make the list. I feel like it needs some type of tweak. It needs some type of adjusting or just straight up get rid of it. I've heard people say the 2,000 minutes maybe could be an alternative to, the players that don't meet the 65 game threshold. That way players like Tyrese Maxey and Cade Cunningham can make it. But I feel like if you're not going to do something like that, lower it to 60, just get rid of the rule altogether. It really is redundant because I feel like voters already took into account when players played certain amount of games and how much they missed. If a player played 60 games and another player played 80 games, okay, I get the difference. Now, the voters are probably going to lean towards the one with more games played. But with the rule, that 60-game person can't even be eligible for third team All-NBA. In this case, that would be Cade Cunningham, who had a career year, led Detroit to the number one seed essentially all year, and he has nothing to show for it at the end of the season, all because of a rule. I'm not saying he should be MVP because of this. I'm not saying he should be first team because of this, but at least a second or third team. It makes no sense, really. You're penalizing the guy because he had a collapsed lung. He played 60 of, I think up to that point, it was 60 of the 70 games that he was eligible for. Okay, he missed 10 games. Whoop-de-doo. It's like, what? For Victor Wembanyama, it's bad timing, honestly. If it wasn't for that rule, he would have had 3 Defensive Player of the Years already in his third season, this one being the third one he'll get. It messes with historical context of things. This player had X amount of Defensive Player of the Years or this amount of All-NBA selections. It's like now you take that away and it messes with the history. All NBA is supposed to be a snapshot into who actually had the best season that year. And now we don't really all the way get the clear shot because somebody might have played 65 games, somebody might have played 64, and the 64 person game might have had a way better season than the 65 or 70 games played person. But now because of this rule, he's left off history altogether and messes with the player's contract. I remember even in, I believe it was 2022, Jason Tatum got snubbed from all the NBA team and his max contract got lowered tremendously. Even last year, Cade Cunningham, same exact person. He made all NBA and he was eligible for maybe like 75 million or so extra onto his max contract. So while I know people are saying, oh, players don't really care about this, it's just an award, it's just XYZ. No, it affects their money and players care about their money. It's not like it's 7 million, 5 million, even 10 million. It's tens of millions of dollars on the line for these players. And it's all going away because 65 game rule that really didn't need to be there in the first place, because voters already take that into consideration when they are doing the voting process. It's like if a player had a defensive player of the year season but only plays 64 games instead of 65, should that erase his entire season? So the first 2 seasons that Wemby had essentially as the best defensive player in the league from the moment he walked in essentially is null and void because there's nothing to show for it. He's not on any all NBA teams. He's not eligible for anything besides the people who were there saw and know that from the day he entered the league, this guy was defensive player of the year essentially every single year. And to put it into even more context, we've had people in the past who have made all NBA and MVP and defensive player of the year with less than 65 games played. Infamously, Bill Walton, he played, I believe, only 50 or 55 games and he won MVP. We've had players in the past like Kawhi Leonard, Jarrett Jackson Jr. There was a couple other players who only played 60 or 65 or even 55 in some cases games and still were eligible for all defensive teams, all NBA teams, defensive player of the year. At this point, we're cutting a hard line in the sand and we're messing with history. I feel like we're messing with history. Call me what you want, but I don't like it. I don't like it. Some solutions that I've seen people say lower the threshold to 2,000 minutes. I've seen people say instead of 65 games, it's 60 games, which I'm more okay with than the 65. I feel like the 65 is just like a weird spot where people say it's a quarter of the season, but it's not necessarily a full quarter of the season. 60 games is more reasonable where it's like, okay, if you miss 22 games, that means it was either a serious injury to keep you out long enough to where you wouldn't have gotten the vote anyway, or you just didn't compile enough games to have a long-term dominant season. Just get rid of the rule altogether. It makes no real sense. And like I said, voters have common sense. Let's just take it from there. People know what they're doing. They're not going to pick somebody who only played 40 games unless he did something we've never, ever seen before, like on a level that we can't even comprehend. That's the only way I really see it. But abolish the rule. Get rid of it. Kaput! The NBA PA is actually appealing this rule as well. They wrote out a letter and a statement to the NBA saying how there needs to be some type of amendment to it. So players like Cade Cunningham, Tyrese Maxey, who genuinely are having injuries or had one major injury, even Jokic, it shouldn't affect them the same way as somebody who's just blatantly taking games off, is healthy enough to play, and is sitting down. And then we have the teams that are also forcing these players to not play. Giannis Antetokounmpo, perfect example. He was healthy enough to play. The team told him sit out. If that was like under his own power, he'd be getting killed, understandably so. But it's like, this is not just the player saying, oh, I don't want to play basketball. I'm stealing a check. I'm doing whatever. No, the teams have a lot of say in this. And the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Utah Jazz, those teams have been fined numerous times this year for the player participation rule that the NBA also has to make sure that there's transparency in the injury report and that players are actually sitting out with legit injuries in the cases that they do sit out. So, I don't like the rule. I don't like it. I keep saying that, but I don't like it. Now, when you zoom out from the league rules and look at the actual competition on the floor, the league feels more wide open than it has in years. So let's take a look at some of the contenders for the championship this year. There hasn't been a single NBA champion to repeat in almost 10 years. The last team to do it was the Warriors, the KD Warriors, I should say, in 17-18. And that tells you everything you need to know about today's league and why it's so wide open. 7 of the last NBA championships have been won by different teams, and the Lakers are the only team to at least make a conference finals since winning the championship. Every other team has failed to even make the finals, conference finals, I think the second round. With that being said, here are my contenders to realistically win the NBA finals this year. Not saying it's all guaranteed, but these are the teams that I believe have the best shot as of today. Number 1, I would say Boston and OKC are the 2 favorites. Boston, with Jaylen Brown having an MVP year, is looking scary, and then they brought back Tatum, who, he's not himself yet, of course. He's not 100%. But they brought him back with about 20 games left in the season to ramp up. He's been getting his legs under him. His shooting percentage has still been super low, especially compared to what his normal averages are. He's been rebounding like crazy. He's been moving pretty well. You can't even really tell, honestly, that he tore his Achilles. And he's getting his gauge, and he's better than nothing. I believe a 60% Jason Tatum is a lot better than a lot of the healthy players in the league, and especially a lot of the healthy players that are on the Celtics. So I believe that the Celtics, especially with Kate Cunningham's injury, the Knicks going up and down. They're a definite favorite to make the finals at least, or if not win it. OKC, they look dominant after starting the season. I believe they were like 15-0, 20-0, something like that. And then they had a little spot where they fell off after the talks of, are they going to break the 73-win Warriors record? That died out. But they caught up again to the level of dominance that they were last year and this year. I've seen a stat, I believe it was Tim Bontemps who said it. The OKC Thunder only played their traditional starting five. This is the 21st game that they played together in 2 years. Only the 7th time that starting five has played together this year. So they've been missing a little bit of continuity, but obviously they can still get it done. Who knows what would have happened if Tyrese Halliburton hadn't torn his ACL in Game 7 of the finals last year? Or else we could probably be thinking about them as, can they get over the hump? The regular season is impressive, but is that enough? We saw last year. So it just goes to show you in the NBA and in sports in general, you're this close from either being historically great or the next great what if. Teams not to sleep on. I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the San Antonio Spurs. Now, traditionally, teams usually climb the mountaintop and not just shoot their way straight up to the mountaintop, as some and most may predict the Spurs to do this year. Usually have to go to round 1 or round 2, lose. Then you go to Eastern Conference or Western Conference Finals. You lose a close one. You may get to the finals, but then you lose. And then it usually takes about the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th try at the playoff runs before you actually make it. I believe Jordan, LeBron, Giannis, all the all-time greats essentially that have won, it took them at least 6 or 7 of their playoff pushes to actually win it all. For the Spurs, Wemby is looking as dominant as ever. To me, I don't think I've seen anything as dominant as far as an early young player since LeBron. 3rd year is where they usually take that next leap. And for me, going into this season, I chose Wemby as Defensive Player of the Year, and I also had him as a sleeper pick to do both MVP and Defensive Player of the Year. Some people were saying this team wouldn't be good enough, but as I said, year 3 for transcendent players are usually the year where they understand it now, they take it to the next level, and they just show everybody what they're about, putting the league on notice, never to look back again. With that being said, the Spurs are super stacked. Stephon Castle, between his perimeter defense and Wemby's interior defense, I believe they are the perfect yin and yang to keep everything on lock, keep everybody suffocated. I feel like you need a signed permission slip to get into that paint on Wemby because you cannot do anything. I believe it was Nick Wright. He brought it up. He said, the NBA needs to create a stat for Wemby called Never Minds, just to keep track of the shots that players don't even attempt because they see Wemby, that big old giant, in the paint. It's like, you see him, I'm not attempting that, pass out. I see him, I'm not attempting that, pass out. The defense that he commands, the defensive gravity, you usually hear about the offensive gravity. His defensive gravity is something that is almost never seen before, unless we're talking maybe prime AD, Hakeem Olajuwon, Shaq, like maybe something like that. But even then, this is a whole nother level. Honestly, I've never seen nothing like it. And all the analysts that I love and respect have never seen anything like it. The Spurs are definitely something to watch. And Dylan Harper, De'Aaron Fox, everybody's just playing well. Everybody understands the role. Everybody's within the chain of commands. And you got the perfect coach that stepped in right after Popovich to just basically be a seamless transition and let the Spurs continue their dominance, their continuity, and their standard of excellence that I don't see going anywhere for at least the next 15, 20 years, as long as Wemby is there and Stephon Castle. Can't forget about him. Sleeper teams, the Knicks and the Nuggets. A lot of people are counting the Knicks out. I think, yes, while their chances may have looked a little bit lower this year than it has last year at this time, I don't think you can completely count them out, especially in a wide open East. Anything can happen. And I believe a team like the Knicks are gritty and they're big game guys. Somebody like Jalen Brunson, he always shows up in the biggest moments. Yes, he can't do it alone, especially as a small guard. Only small guards that we've seen do it is Steph Curry, who's about like 6'2", 6'3", and then Isaiah Thomas, who's also probably about 6 foot, 6'1", 6'2" at most. Those are the only two. Allen Iverson led his team to the finals, but lost to the Kobe and Shaq Lakers. So it's going to be a tall task for Jalen Brunson. I believe between him, Karl Anthony Towns, Bridges, OG, I feel like everybody, they just got to play their role, stay locked in, and don't let the noise get to them. Don't get depressed when things go bad. Everybody else besides Brunson has a tendency, even Josh Hart too, has a tendency to get tight when things aren't going their way and get down on themselves, specifically Cat. Karl-Anthony Towns, he's a great player. Honestly, when the Knicks made that move for him, I thought that was all they needed to be a championship team. I thought that was the last piece between Mikal Bridges, Karl-Anthony Towns, and OG. I felt like somebody even jokingly said this. The Knicks were the first super team full of role players. But to me, while that was looked at as like a downside, I thought they matched up perfectly with a team like the Celtics, who at the time were just coming off a championship. And then also a team like OKC Thunder, who has so much depth, so much wing versatility, and just so much interchangeable guys that, anybody on any given night could beat you. And they have people who are perfect in their role. So let's see ultimately what the Knicks can do. I say realistically, a second round is probably what you should expect, but this team do not write them off to get to the finals. And the Nuggets are another one. Nikola Jokic, you cannot count him out. While he's never had a legit all-star, perennial all-star teammate, Jamal Murray, he plays like Michael Jordan, LeBron, Kobe, Steph, all in one in the biggest playoff moments. And even when they went on their championship run, he was a large reason why. The team goes as he goes. Nikola Jokic, you essentially know what you're going to get. Either a 20-20 game, 20-point triple-double, 30-point triple-double. You're going to get high assist, high playmaking, smart, savvy plays. You're going to get rebounds. You're going to get a fluid offense. It's just who's going to come along with him on the ride. And I feel like after the Nuggets won their championship, the team got a little spoiled. They got a little, high on their supply and was like, we don't need players like Bruce Brown. We can get rid of him. We can just pick up some interchangeable guys and marginal guys because we already have Nikola Jokic, who is arguably the best player in the league. And I feel like that came back to bite them. They definitely missed Bruce Brown for a stretch. They missed other guys that got injured. Christian Braun took a step back for a little bit, but now he's starting to look like himself again. Michael Porter Jr. had a lot of injuries. He was up and down, in and out the lineup. Aaron Gordon, who is their second or third best player on a lot of nights, he also had a lot of injuries, back issues, and some things that really kept him from playing like his best self and also hobbled a little bit. But all in all, I think the Nuggets are a team to watch and do not sleep on them. They play OKC hard all the time. Last year was a 7-game series. To me, that was the best series in the entire playoffs. I didn't even expect that, but it ended up working out for the greater good. Let's see what happens this year. The Pistons. If it wasn't for Cade Cunningham's injury, the Pistons would be my team to pick to get to the conference finals against Boston. Depending on how the brackets play out and everything like that, Pistons and Boston would be my top two in the East as far as the East is concerned. Cade Cunningham's injury kind of, puts a little damper on how high I am on the Pistons. Bad Boy Pistons Part 3. But, I still think they're looking really good without Cade, and they've been playing well so far. And this is actually a trial period, I believe, for the others to get accustomed to not having to rely on him for everything, for scoring, for playmaking, for defense, for things like that. Allow other guys to get more comfort, get in a rhythm, explore their game just a little bit more as we get into the playoffs, because you're going to need other guys to come along with you in the playoffs, as I mentioned with Nikola Jokic, Jalen Brunson, guys like that. No one man wins an NBA Finals, let alone gets there by himself. Unless your name is LeBron, but even then you don't win it. And Michael Jordan, for all the 6-0 talk, he's not doing anything by himself. 1-9 in the playoffs without Scottie. Sorry, that was a Jordan stray. But it's the facts. While the competition on the court is wide open, the league itself might also be expanding in the near future. And if that happens, that can totally reshape the NBA and the way we view it. If the NBA actually does go into the expansion, Seattle getting the Sonics back almost seems inevitable. The two locations that the NBA will expand to is Seattle and Las Vegas. These two markets, I feel like the NBA had their eye on for a long time. Ever since the Sonics left Seattle and then turned to the OKC Thunder in 2008, the league has always been looking to get Seattle back a team because they honestly have one of the greatest fan bases, one of the most electric arenas. Any player that you hear speak about playing in Seattle has nothing but great things, including Kevin Durant, who got drafted by the Sonics and was the last face of their franchise. Las Vegas. This one, honestly, is going to be a little tricky. I believe it's a great location as far as money's concerned, as far as like the league and what their agenda is with all the gambling and all that stuff. I feel like it only makes sense. But from a logistics standpoint, as far as day to day for an NBA player, I feel like this is going to take a ton of focus. Now, I know a lot of people are saying the WNBA, they have the aces there and they've gotten to a lot of finals. They won a lot of championships. Asia Wilson has been almost essentially the greatest team that we've had in the last half a decade in the WNBA. But I believe it's a little different for the NBA. Even when you look at the NFL, MLB, NHL, all the other leagues that are basically expanding into the Las Vegas market, NBA is different. The NFL, you get in, you get out, you're there for 1 week. Even if you're Las Vegas Raiders home team, you're still there for a little bit. You're headed to the next state. You might be there for a week or so. You have curfew as well as the NFL players. It's super, super strict in the NFL compared to the NBA. NBA players have a lot of downtime. I don't know if people really understand this, but outside of practice and games and stuff like that, even in the days of practice and games, you still have a lot of time before and after games to do essentially whatever you want. The great players stay out of trouble, work on their game, use their time to recover, focus on studying game tape, film study, just overall improving yourself and just becoming the greatest that you could possibly be. Most players, I would say, especially in the wake of this whole gambling stuff with Terry Rozier, Chauncey Billups and all that, are very likely to get themselves into some trouble, whether it's with prostitution, Zion Williamson, whether it's with gambling, the Terry Rozier, whether it's with just anything that is not what you should be doing as a professional athlete, especially somebody who's taking your craft seriously and wanting to elevate your status. Now, assuming everything goes through, the NBA was saying that either the Minnesota Timberwolves or the New Orleans Pelicans would have to go to the Eastern Conference in order to create the balance again for 16 teams on the East and the West as 2 new teams get added to the West. So honestly, I would say I would want the Minnesota Timberwolves to go to the East. To me, if the Pelicans go to the East, it's a little bit redundant. The East is already pretty weak compared to the West. And also Anthony Edwards playing on the East Coast schedule against East Coast teams, more primetime games, more opportunities to dominate. Essentially, you would think he would go further in the playoffs. They said the weak East is why LeBron did what he did. So, I mean, Anthony Edwards should be able to just get to the finals, get to the conference finals, and essentially play in as many big games as possible and cement himself as the face of the league, if not one of the faces of the league. And to the face of the league point, I think him and Wemby are kind of interchangeable. It just depends on like what you're looking for in the face of the league. If you want a guy who's just going to be authentically himself, a guy who's American, a guy who's just like the old faces of the league as far as like background and upbringing and everything like that, and Edwards is your guy. But he's also not as politically correct as like LeBron was or even Michael Jordan. If you want somebody who's more in that light, Wemby's your guy. He'll still let you know what he's thinking, but he's not going to put as much sauce on it as Anthony Edwards. Now, in addition to all of that, the Seattle Sonics would get all their history back, all the retired jerseys, the championships would return back to the Seattle Sonics away from the OKC Thunder, who currently has all of the Sonics history. To me, this is a perfect idea. It's only right. You need to give back everything that they had as far as jerseys, team colors, championships, retired jerseys, and everything of that sort, because it is their history after all. And OKC started from scratch. And we don't really consider the Sonics of the past attached to the OKC Thunder as far as real life is concerned. Maybe in the record books because that's just how it was worked out and agreed on. But from a fan point of view, we don't really look at it like that. It's all separate. So Sonics, they deserve it. And a lot of people have been saying also the league doesn't have enough talent to expand. What are we going to do about tanking? We already have that problem. And now you want to add more teams? Now, look, to me, I feel like the league has more than enough talent, especially with the guys coming in. Obviously, going to be horrible teams that come from this. Like when the last team got added, the Charlotte Bobcats, they were horrible essentially from the time they were added in the mid-2000s up until basically this year, which is the first time they really, really became respectable. I mean, they had Kemba Walker. They had, certain guys that like made them somewhat watchable. But for the most part, they were always the bottom of the league. You knew that was an easy victory. You just go there and just, for lack of a better term, get your shit off and then move on. So I think what the league more so wants is more teams like the Miami Heat, who I believe got added in 1986, along with some other teams, about like 4, 5, 6 teams. And the Miami Heat made themselves quickly into a respectable franchise. And now with the Miami Heat, you have Heat culture. They've won championships with LeBron. They won championships with Dwayne Wade. They've only been around for about 40 years. And you can't even tell. They're surpassing a lot of franchises who've been there from the inception of the league. So this expansion thing can go either way. The league said they're going to increase the draft lottery chances for the new teams to help them get better players quicker. There's going to be an expansion draft, and the rules of that are pretty interesting as well. Pull that up right now. So right now, the expansion rules are as followed. I just pulled them up. Current NBA expansion draft rules. Expansion teams can select unprotected players from existing rosters. Each team is allowed to protect up to 8 players. Players on expiring contracts or restricted free agents cannot be protected. Only one player may be taken from each team. Selected players keep their existing contracts. Expansion teams receive favorable odds for the number 1 pick in the NBA draft. Those are the current draft rules for an expansion. Let's see if they actually hold up. Let's see if they get changed. But as of right now, probably would be looking at guys like Peyton Pritchard, Jared McCain, Russell Westbrook, Gary Payton, Jonathan Kuminga, Wendell Carter, and maybe even somebody like Ja Morant. With the way that his career trajectory is going, seems like he may be somebody that teams don't necessarily want to get their hands on because of all the off-the-court issues. So he could be perfect for a star player in an expansion draft, which will happen in a couple years. Also, Kevin Durant's contract with the Houston Rockets is up in the 2028 season. And the league also said that's what they're aiming for, to get the Sonics and the Vegas teams actually up and running. So, assuming that happens, could we possibly see KD do a farewell tour in the Seattle Sonics where it all started? I don't know. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but that would be something that I would love to see for nostalgic purposes only. Imagine KD finishing his career in Seattle where it all started. That would be amazing to see. I would love it. Now, the NBA was saying that the Seattle and the Vegas teams will likely be about 7 to 10 billion starting point. Let's see if that actually happens. The Lakers recently sold for about 10 billion, I believe it was, and the Celtics sold for 6 billion a couple years ago. So the floor is going to be high. LeBron had mentioned as well that he wanted to buy into a team probably about 5-10 years ago, but now it doesn't look like that's going to happen. The investment group that he's a part of, I believe it's Fenway Sports, they also pulled out recently and said they weren't interested. It's a lot of time between now and the time that the teams actually will come into fruition, but we'll see what happens. Let's see if LeBron can get some guys to get the money together. Him and Rich Paul, Maverick Carter, let's see any strings they can pull. If not, it's off the table for LeBron in ownership. As far as majority ownership is concerned, even though I would personally love to see it, it would make a lot of sense. Keep the GOAT around the game, even if you don't think he's the GOAT, the second greatest player, whatever. Keep him around the game, and, it would be a great ambassador, especially for a new program. And if not this one, he may get one in the future, but the price is only going to go up and up and up. So it feels like now or never from a majority ownership standpoint in the NBA. And just some quick math here. 7 to 10 billion expansion fee times 2. That's about 14 to 20 billion in expansion fees for the two teams. And if you divide that by 30 owners, it's about 466 million to 666 million payout per owner. So it makes sense why this was a unanimous vote and the owners all were down with it, even the ones that are obviously tanking and not trying to win, and the ones that are winning and don't want more teams, I guess, to dilute and take away from what they're doing right now. It's going to be a huge deal, and it makes up for the 3 to 4 years of each team's national TV revenue distribution from the NBA. So it's a lot, but it's interesting. Before we wrap up today's episode, let's run through a couple quick storylines that are circulating the world of sports today. March Madness. I know people said they don't see really a lot of upsets, but I feel like there's been enough upsets this year that makes it worthwhile watching. Every single year, you're not going to have every team upset. You're not going to have a huge Cinderella story. Although Iowa is definitely catching a lot of people by surprise. They even beat Nebraska 77-71 today. That one was a great game. Came down to the last minute. Nebraska only sent 4 players out on the last play. How do you only send 4 players out with your season on the line? This makes no sense. You're supposed to be the coach. You're supposed to be the guy that's overseeing everything. The players trust you. You're a grown-ass man, and you send 4 players out on the court when they hit the dagger after with your season on the line. Absolutely inexcusable. It doesn't make any sense. Makes no sense whatsoever. Inexcusable. Texas and Purdue. Purdue got a game-winning tip-in to advance to the Elite Eight. They are really doing their thing, and they're showing why they should be taken seriously. As I'm recording this right now, 2 games are being played. Illinois and Houston. Right now, it seems like Houston is not coming back. They're about to get upset by Illinois, and it seems like Arizona is going to send home Arkansas, who some people might say it's an upset, but overall, if you really know what you're saying, it's not an upset. Arizona was supposed to win this game. Darius A-Cup, he has been lifting his draft stock tremendously. He is a bucket, essentially averaging 30 game in and game out. Going into this, you might not have known who he is, but now you definitely know who he is. And he's been putting the entire world, not even just the league, the entire world on notice. I'm a believer. And he honestly might be a lottery top 5, top 10 pick going into this tournament. He probably was definitely a first rounder, but I don't think he was that high. AJ DeBansa and Darren Peterson both got eliminated early. Two of what can possibly be the top 2 picks, 1 and 2. Personally, I would say AJ DeBansa should go number 1 overall over everybody else, including Darren Peterson. Even though Darren Peterson, you may say, has a higher ceiling, I feel comfortable with AJ DeBansa, as his floor, I believe, is a lot higher than Darren Peterson's floor. A lot less you have to worry about off the court mentality, just getting into trouble or not getting into trouble, being a great kid, not checking himself out early with games with cramps or whatever. And not to say that anything that Darren Peterson has done is illegitimate as far as deceiving people with his injuries or whatever. But from just a GM standpoint, I think AJ DeBansa, you cannot go wrong. Either way, both players are going to be amazing. I have high faith in both players, but I would take DeBansa first, Darren Peterson second, and then A-Cuff about in that top 8, top 10 at worst, depending on the team he goes to. We'll see how that plays out. Let's see who actually gets locked in for the top 1, 2, 3 pick. Then we could really get into the draft order more. But I would have loved to see AJ DeBansa at least win a round. I don't blame him because his team is trash. It's just him by himself. But I still would have loved to see him go deeper into the March Madness tournament, establish himself. I still would have loved to see that. The MVP race this year has been heating up, and there's multiple candidates who have a great shot of actually winning it all. Number 1 on my list, I have SGA. SGA is going to win MVP to me. I'm assuming he doesn't suffer some type of injury and miss the 65-game threshold. I believe he's a lock for the MVP. Second and third, that is becoming more debatable now. It's either between Wemby or Luka. Luka has been insane post the divorce and the custody battle and everything like that. Honestly, he's taking it to another level. The Lakers were looking good. They were, I believe, on a 9-game win streak before losing to the Pistons the other night. I would personally have Wemby second, but Luka third, you can't go wrong with either one of them. They look good. Jaylen Brown, Cade Cunningham, they were dark horses, but Cade Cunningham's injury made him fall off. Jason Tatum coming back made Jaylen Brown, take a little step back. But prior to that, I had Jaylen Brown and Cade Cunningham in my top 3, top 5 for sure of MVP candidates, legit MVP candidates. Joker, to me, I feel like we can't just give him MVP every year. That's the precedent that has been set. LeBron, Michael Jordan, those guys, 2 of the greatest players ever, they at some point voter fatigue kicked in and they stopped winning MVP, especially for LeBron. He won his last MVP, I believe, at age 28. That was like 12 years ago. It makes no sense. I believe 2013 was his last year winning MVP. That, to me, is asinine, especially considered all the great years, even greater than those that he's had. So for me, Nikola Jokic has to win more rings in order for us to restart that clock as far as his MVP award winnings, because from an all-time standpoint as well, he's gone as far as you could possibly go without winning more championships. 1 ring and 1 million MVPs, to me, still has a certain ceiling on there where you can only get but so high until you start winning 2, 3, 4 NBA championships. Then you break into the top 10, top 5 of my personal all-time ranking list. If AJ Brown gets traded, it could reshape the entire NFL offseason. Eagles fans and NFL fans all around are waiting for that AJ Brown bombshell to drop. We never know when or if it's even coming. The Patriots were a team that was to watch. Before DJ Moore came to the Bills, they were a team to watch. We've heard talks about maybe the Chargers, maybe even the Raiders get Fernando Mendoza some help. I think, as an Eagles fan myself, we should either try to get Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, or somebody like that for AJ Brown. We've seen guys go for 3rd and 5th round picks. We've seen guys go for 1st and 2nd picks. AJ Brown is a high caliber wide receiver. I'm okay keeping him, but we need a change up with all the locker room stuff that's going on. He's not happy with the offense. Him and Jalen Hurts haven't been on the same page in a couple years. Again, I'm all for keeping him, but if we can get a great deal, let him go. I'm all for that even more so. And we can start over. Howie Roseman, he's a magician. He always knows exactly what to do. And I have faith in him. I believe we can get done. So waiting for the AJ Brown bombshell to drop, and let's see what actually happens. Also, some elite pass rushers could be on the move as well again. I know I just mentioned Max Crosby. Him going back to the Raiders, that was a bizarre situation, honestly. I feel like the Ravens got cold feet. They realized, damn, we gave up way too much for this guy, a first and a second. We couldn't resign some of our other players. We lost players on offense and defense. I think we're going to need those picks, especially after we heard Trey Hendrickson was available for a way less asking price. Even though he's not the same caliber of player as Max Crosby, it's still close enough to where those first and second round draft picks are enough to make you rescind it and fail the physical, when really, as Max Crosby said, it was weird energy from the moment he got there. They didn't even fly him private. They flew him to DC, where he then had to take a 2-hour car ride from the airport to the facility. Didn't meet the owner until like an hour or 2 hours after the physical. It was just a weird thing. So let's say it this way. I don't believe Max Crosby is going to end this upcoming season on the Raiders. He may start it on the Raiders, but I doubt he'll end it there, especially beginning next season. Where he'll go, that remains to be seen. The Cowboys, the Eagles, I believe the Eagles should probably inquire, see what they can do. Maybe they can do AJ Brown and get Max Crosby plus somebody else, or plus some draft picks or whatever, because he is technically considered damaged goods with a failed physical, even though I believe he'll be healthy and ready to go at the top of his powers, or at least damn near close, by the time this NFL season starts. And that wraps today's episode of Above the Noise. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you subscribe, like, comment so you don't miss future episodes. Follow Zero Gravity Sports Media on all social platforms for more analysis, highlights, and sports coverage. And if you want to support, also join our Patreon. The link is going to be in the description. You'll get bonus content, merch discounts, input on topics, and just overall better experience, more intimate experience with me and the Zero Gravity family. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe for more.